Today is March 30th, 2022. It's 7 p.m. Town of Southington Board of Finance meeting. Just ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Zoney?
Here.
Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Mr. Bedoin?
Here.
Mr. Pocock?
Here.
Mr. Lebenik?
Here.
Chairman Leary?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay.
Friday.
Friday for public.
Okay. Okay, approval of the minutes of the February 9th meeting. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding those minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes of February 9th are approved. Official. Now we want to assess the current state of the town, but first we want to have the presentation of the comprehensive annual financial report that we call the CAFR for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021 by Leslie Zoll, partner for Bloom Shapiro. Thank you for coming and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I did hand out a presentation that you can look along. Stop me at any time if you have any questions. I'm just going to briefly explain the terms of our audit engagement, the high-level results of our audit, some financial highlights for you in terms of numbers, talk about the federal and state single audit, some required governance communications, and then some upcoming Gatsbys that you should be aware of. In terms of our engagement, our audit engagement, we do express opinions on whether or not the basic financial statements are presented in accordance with GAAP. The town is responsible for those financial statements to make sure that they're free from those material misstatements. We do express an in relation to opinion on the schedule of expenditures on federal awards and state financial assistance. And we do express an opinion on compliance related to those state and federal programs that we test. We provide a report on internal control over financial statements as a whole. We do not opine on internal control. If there's any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, we are required to share that with you, but we don't opine on internal controls. And we also provide a similar report on internal controls as it relates to the major state and federal programs that we test, and I will go through that when we get to the single audit section. So on slide 5, I just want to go over some of the high-level audit results. As far as the financial statements go, you did receive an unmodified opinion on those financial statements. That's what you would want to receive each and every year. There was 2 issues this year as it relates to specific activity. One is a restatement on capital projects due to the money owed from the state on school construction. I know there's a delay at the state in receiving those funds. There is, in terms of GAAP, there is a 60-day window in which to record that revenue. If it doesn't come in on time, it should be a deferred inflow. So we did restate the financial statements for that. The second thing is related to the Southington Water Company, which is unique to the town of Southington. The restatement was in regards to prior year debt service for the water company and how that's reported in the fund financial statements. And both of those transactions and restatements can be found in footnote 13 of the financial statements. In terms of the federal single audit, you also received an unmodified opinion, and there's no compliance findings or internal control issues to report to you tonight on the federal side. On the state single audit as well, it's a clean report, unmodified opinion on the state programs, and no compliance issues. On slide 8, this is from your MD&A that's written by the finance office. I usually like to show this schedule just because it shows last year's and this year's in terms of government-wide. So this schedule right here is government-wide financial statements. That's the full accrual basis statements. So they include long-term assets, long-term liabilities. They include the governmental activities column includes all governmental funds with the exception of the pension trust funds. Business type activities is your WPCA, and that's on the full accrual basis of accounting. Total net position as of 6/30/2021 is $217,345,000. So those are in thousands. It's an increase of $4.5 million from last year. Your governmental activities did go down $4.1 million. Your business type activities went up $8.7, and that's mostly for the capital asset transfers from the government side to the WPCA. The next schedule is the balance sheet for the governmental funds that's on a modified basis of accrual. And we opine on each of these columns on the major funds, the general fund, capital projects, emergency management is now a major fund. That's where your ARPA fund money is, and then debt service is now a major fund. The non-major governmental funds column is a total of all the smaller funds, and if you want the detail on those smaller funds, they're shown in the back of the report. General fund balance as of 6/30 is $30 million. That's down $1.3 million from last year. Your capital projects is actually up $23.6 million due to the issuance of your bonds and notes. And your debt service fund balance is $10.7 million as of 6/30. That's up $3.3 million from last year. Your non-major governmental funds fund balance is $6 million. That's up $1 million from last year. Moving on to the sewer enterprise fund on slide 10. Your net position is $96.5 million. That's up $8.7 million from last year. And then your internal service fund, unrestricted net position is $11.8 million, and that's up $3.4 million from last year. Just to give you some financial highlights in terms of some things you might want to note. Current year tax collections do stay strong at 99.3%. That's up from last year at 99.13%. Your general fund unassigned fund balance is $25.4 million. That represents 14.9% of general fund revenues. That's up 0.8% from the prior year. Your MERS pension liability is now at $59 million compared to $54 in the prior year. And total OPEB liability, which is your total cost of post-retirement benefits, is now at $49.9 million compared to $48.9 million in the prior year. That total OPEB liability is basically your implicit rate subsidy. Does anyone have any questions on the financial statements right now?
What was the OPEB liability? I mean, not the number, but what was what was behind it? The benefits, healthcare, what is it?
Other post-employment benefits.
Yeah, but what?
Implicit rate subsidy is really because the retirees are paying into their own, they're paying in for their benefits, but they were getting a different rate, and that creates the liability per gap on the financial statements.
Okay.
I had a question also.
Sure.
Page 8, it is in thousands, doesn't say it on the chart?
Everything is in thousands.
Okay.
Yep. As is the financial statements.
So can you just show us what page those restatements?
What page the footnotes on? Footnote 13?
Well, yeah, but doesn't, you said it was restated.
Debt service fund.
So it was June 30 number was reinstated.
The beginning
change.
balance, yes.
So I'm looking at which numbers were,
Which question are you asking?
well, you had, well,
On what page?
I guess at the beginning where she talked about the two
For revenue and the.
You had two
that-
restatements, I guess. Where did that flow into the financial highlights? The two
So
internal controls.
they're not specifically shown in my financial highlights on this slide. They're shown on Exhibit 4 of the financial statements in the beginning fund balance numbers. The government-wide has not been restated. It's only the fund financial statements that have been restated for those two issues.
So basically, for the capital projects fund, what happened was that we were recognizing the revenue related to the money that was owed us from the state of Connecticut. And we've had it on our books for years, because when we realized we were owed it at the time, everybody was posting it to their books at receivable and a revenue. Now, they're looking at it and saying, wait a minute, if it's not received within 60 days, that has to be backed out. So that's basically what we had to do this year.
Backed it out to where? To,
To,
you put a
So you're
provision
actually,
against it,
you're
or
starting at a lower fund balance for the year. It's,
You reserve against it or reclass it to a different revenue account?
it actually gets shown as a deferred inflow on the financial statements.
Okay.
I call it different.
So it's more of a timing issue, John, where we can't recognize that revenue until it comes in, until
So
the
we're not
state
gonna
pays it.
credit revenue, debit accounts receivable, what would we do? We do
Once
that
the money
immediately when we know
comes-
it's not going to come, we change it, so we reverse that, right? And we do what?
So we took it out of revenue and we booked a deferred inflow. When the money comes in, that deferred inflow would go away and then you would recognize the revenue.
So deferred inflow is a balance sheet account?
It's a balance sheet account. It's
Okay.
more like a liability account.
Okay. So you
It's like
have
a deferred
it's net.
revenue.
It's a net, you still have a receivable and then you have a liability against it.
Correct.
And that liability reconverts to revenue when it gets paid.
Exactly.
But the issue for us and for multiple towns
Yes.
is that we've been recognizing the revenue early on in the process, or because, and even knowing that the state would take several years to get that money to us, and now the interpretation has changed.
It's just 60 days.
And then the other issue, just to answer your question, Kevin, we actually increased the debt service fund to show the receivable that's owed from the water company. The debt was always on the books, but the receivable was not, and we wanted to put that receivable on the fund financial statements. The receivable was already in the government-wide statements. So
But
that
not
was
on
that
the
change.
statements.
Okay, so you just like pushed it down. So those were, I would say, rather minor. You would,
They're not systemic issues, they're more transactional based and easily fixed and remedied.
And we've always handled those issues
Yeah.
that way.
so it's a
So that
change
cha-
in the way interpretation.
Correct.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question. And don't answer this if you don't want to. It's just a curiosity for me, which is when you see. I mean, obviously you go to a lot of municipalities, right, and audit them. But how would you characterize the health of our finances compared to what you've seen elsewhere? And again, I know you said you weren't going to opine, so I'm just curious as to what your view was.
Well, I can. It's a tough question.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
But I think 14.9 is close to what I've been seeing in the state of Connecticut. That's for unassigned fund balance in the general fund, so I can say that.
Okay.
Hopefully that helps some.
25.4. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was just curious if there's any comparison you could make, but thank you.
We're 25 less, right? You got to subtract that other number. Talking about like undesignated fund balance.
14.9% is
Right, the percentage.
Yeah, so
The
we're
percentage of revenues.
22.6 at the close. Is that on slide 9?
Yep.
So So you take the 25,388 less the 2753, and the happens to be in a different column, the capital. So it was 22,635, the number?
No.
No, your unassigned fund balance is 25.3.
What do you do with the 2753 in the next column?
That's the capital projects. So
A different
basically,
fund.
the difference here is, I'm sorry.
But doesn't one need to cover the other, in a way?
I'm sorry.
What's your question, John?
Well, in the second column, in the capital projects fund, you have a $2.7 million, a $2.8 million credit in unassigned, and in the general fund, you have 25.4 debit. Wouldn't you net those if you're looking at total town, or no?
If you're trying to assess how much you actually have to be spent, then yes, you would net the two in the total governmental
Right.
funds, yes.
But by pure definition of a rainy day fund, it would be the 25,388. You'd
Correct.
ignore temporarily the 2753 in the other fund.
The deficit in the capital projects, John, is really just due to timing of when you actually bond from when you actually spend
Yeah.
money to do those projects. Once you bond, that deficit goes away.
So that's all in play. So we look back at the 25,388. Okay. Well, that was more of a director question. It was a director question directed at the auditor. But yeah, so,
I'm okay if Amelia answers.
but yeah, that's fine. I like to think we remain a healthy town, healthy in how we prepare our financial statements and report, and also healthy in our reserves and how we manage as a board or as a town.
There's nothing that we noted that is a concern
Yep.
at this point. I'm going to move on if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay. In terms of the federal single audit, federal awards that were expended for 6/30/21 is $7.8 million. We take that schedule and do a risk assessment based on the prescribed procedures of the government, and so we've determined that we needed to test special education cluster, CRF funds, education stabilization fund, and the drinking water fund. Again, all four of those programs, we tested for compliance. There was no issues to report you and no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies within those programs. On the state side, the state awards expended $37.5 million. We tested clean water, open choice, and early care and education. Again, for all three of those programs, there was no findings to report, no compliance issues or internal control issues related to those programs. There was a new standard adopted this year, Gatsby 87, on fiduciary activities. Two things came to play with that Gatsby. Student activities over at the Board of Ed is now in the financial statements. It used to be an agency fund that was outside of the governmental funds. So that beginning balance of $691 then comes on to the balance sheet of the town. And the escrow fund that used to be an agency fund is now an asset and a corresponding liability within the general fund. In terms of the financial statement significant estimates, we just want to let you be aware of those. Capital assets, useful lives is one of those significant estimates. If you change your useful lives, it changes the depreciation, which will change your asset value on the balance sheet. Net pension liability is very volatile and depends on the actuary assumptions, as well as your total OPEB liability. In terms of required communication, there was no disagreements with management, Amelia and Christine, and the Board of Ed with Jen. Everybody was very helpful in terms of getting information to us. Management did not consult any other accountants. There was no difficulties performed during the audit, no uncorrected misstatements, and no independence issues. And I just wanted to follow up lastly on the new Gatsbys that are coming down the pike. I won't discuss all of them, but the list is here for you if you want to read them or go through them at all. Gatsby 87 primarily is the most significant Gatsby we've had in a while. It will be a heavier lift for some municipalities. Currently, right now, you have about $9 million in capital leases. Those capital leases will most likely stay there and be recorded the same. However, operating leases are now going to go on the balance sheet, and you're going to need to value those. So it's important that the town prepare an inventory of anything that may possibly be a lease. We're finding that things like water coolers or like security systems or phone services sometimes will apply this Gatsby 87 and need to be valued. So it's really a question of going through recurring payments, recurring vendors, and looking at the agreements that you have with them and making sure that you are valuing those, putting that in the inventory, and recording those on the balance sheet in accordance with this lease standard.
That is a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, we went through it recently under GAP, and it's a lot of work to get the definitions out, get everybody clear, and we're going to find a lot of them as you roll over to rocks.
And this is applicable for 6/30/22, so your next year's audit.
Performance contracts. They come under different names. You don't, the word lease isn't in them, so you
Correct.
have to kind of hunt them down.
In the following year, 2023, you'll have Gatsby 91 on conduit debt. None of these, all three of these actually, are very specific transactions that will only apply to the town if you have these types of transactions. So we're not too worried about these. We're more worried right now about preparing for 87 for next year's audit. Does anybody have any other questions in regards to the audit that you may have?
I had one.
Sure.
So during your, did you know any recommendations or improvements based on your internal control review?
So we do have two comments and recommendations that are just best practice. Hopefully Amelia sent you those, the management letter.
They're in the electronic file that I sent you.
Okay.
There's two to mention. One's on fund reporting, which just means that there's still some smaller funds that are not on the general ledger. They're done manually. And we just suggest that they put that on the financial management system so that you can track it more regularly. And the other one is in regards to accounting procedures manuals. Amelia has been trying to get together processes and documenting those, but we do think that putting a manual in place that's fully documented would help with turnover of staff.
Thank you so much for walking us
Thank
through
you.
that,
Thank
for
you.
conducting the audit, and we're glad it all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Amelia, thanks for doing your job again. Well, your whole staff, everyone.
You can't wait to put together a manual.
That's hard, but that takes.
We're actually starting the process. We have a lot of the processes in
No, that takes a long, even if
hard.
they don't
It's
have
difficult.
manuals, that's a long process.
You do need assistance with the implementation of the leasing standards. Prior company, we brought in consultants. It was very complicated.
say that because CLA offers a tool, a program for that. And there's a couple other entities out there that are doing the same. But it's not just a matter of putting the information.
No,
You
you
have
have
to
to find
review
it.
it, yeah.
But we went through PwC tool. But aside from that, it's going to be a challenge in a way. So if there is, get it all set up.
Looking right, there's one right over there. Water cooler. I mean, they're everywhere.
All these performance
everywhere, yeah.
contracts and radio systems. Okay.
Yeah, that's-
All right. Let's go into the health of the town, the financial report.
Oh, sorry. That's me.
That's you.
Okay. Revenues. Through the end, I gave you until the end of February because we're going to have an April meeting and then, plus we haven't completed March yet. Prior year's taxes are about 90,000 over budget. Interest on taxes are about 100,000 over budget. Building permit and fees are about 200,000 over budget. Town clerk fees are still going strong at $500,000 over budget. And then we have a few items, the Kerma equity revenue that came in higher than anticipated. Got another $18,000 in our pilot program.
It's still going up.
It's going in the right direction.
This
yes.
is over budget on revenue, which is a positive.
Yes, correct. As for the expenditures, other than the information that's on here for you to address today, there's really nothing that's come to light. I'm glad to say that nothing of significance.
Do you know where the contingency is at this point?
Yeah, it's
I
right
guess we could
here.
knock it down too.
Yeah, it's 400 and something. Get you a page. Here we go. Page 29, I guess, if you look at the top of the munis reports. 50,666. We've only.
There's two on the.
Okay, you'd look to the second, the regular contingency. Normally it would be 70,666. 20,000 for.
Library.
We're going to have a couple items here. Questions on revenue?
Questions? Any questions, Rev?
The investments, Amelia, because don't you usually have that in here? Investment income?
They're probably breaking even, that's why she doesn't have it.
Is that why?
Yeah. They're actually breaking even, yeah, so that's why I'll be happy to meet the budget this year.
No, that's good, yeah, it's a tough year.
That's a positive.
Yeah.
That's a
Yes.
positive.
I know,
Remember
it's a hard
last year we lost ground, so it's a
Yes.
positive.
Yeah.
And, board April 18th.
Oh, good. Okay.
Where did you find him? Or where did you find the person?
Interesting story. She's actually our previous accountant who left.
She knows the town. She knows.
Worked for the water department before that.
We'll put a formal statement out with
Yes.
the name
Oh,
and everything.
Good,
afterwards,
good.
Great,
so that's
thank
good.
you, thank you.
We're just
What's
very,
the start date?
April.
Okay, great.
Yes, it is. Definitely is.
Okay, subcommittees. So we'll get into sewer committee first, Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. 'Cause, sewer lining is going strong. We'll use up the $1 million in about 3 months, which means about the old borough section will be totally lined, and some of the pre-1980 sewers, which is now 21%, more of that will be relined as well. Quick comment on supply chain issues. It's not really financial per se, but it may impact. The West Queen pump station, we couldn't get a certain type of connectors, and we had to go after different ones, and those came in. But these things just delay the project, and I think you're going to see that more and more. There's no financial impact as yet. the pump station, the 3 pump stations that are currently being designed, we're ahead of by about $50,000 right now, and that's going great too. Which are the next 3, which will be done as soon as we finish these 2. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right, Public Works, Mr. Pocock, Mr. Bedoin.
Got one coming up.
Yeah, we have one
But
next. So
the
I
main
guess-
thing is the meeting will be next week.
Right.
Next Wednesday, but the public just needs to be informed all the time. Hopefully it's now open every Saturday.
Saturday.
Remember. Stickers. So where to get those? They're at the second Saturday and third Saturday. Like any other road, a state highway or other potholes, and they have they're trying to get them.
Shifting to potholes and curbs corrections like we always do in the spring. But I asked the
We take a beating from the freeze-thaw cycles. Have a warm day, a rainy day, then a freezing day.
it was a very, it may not seem very difficult with snow, but it was
Big thing with the patching, they had that patching machine there.
We have a new machine or a new
much quicker process.
Yeah, it's hot. It's actually like difficult to keep up with. Other than that, that's about it. The main thing is
open space, Mr. Pocock?
we have things going, but it's all in executive session.
Okay. Self-insurance, Mr. Lebenik, Mr. Bedoin?
Sure, I think we spoke about this at our workshop, but I don't believe we've had a conversation. So we had a special meeting on March 21st, and really the big news coming out of that meeting was that the Self-Insurance Committee recommended a budget $1 million higher than what was previously recommended, I believe, in December. And so the previous recommendation was $24.5 million, using $1 million from the reserve fund, which netted to $23.5 million. And the recommendation went up $1 million, still using the $1 million from the reserve fund, so it was $25.5 recommendation, netting down to $24.5, driven really by we've had 2 difficult months, January and February, both at a $2.5 to $2.6 million run rate. That's significantly elevated from where it was over the past couple of years, and even higher than where it was pre-COVID. The jury is really still out, and there's not enough information known as to what exactly is driving that or how much of it could be influenced by catch-up, if you will, in terms of delayed services during COVID. The recommendation from our consultant had come in even higher. The Self-Insurance Committee, again, recommended $25.5. One of the things influencing our decision was if we looked back at what the pre-COVID run rate was and trended that at a more normal level, it got us to about that $25.5 million. So obviously, we have a meeting coming up. So that's really the big news coming out of the meeting. Sure. The council decided to renew with Anthem for.
Okay. Thank you. We'll talk more about that when we get into the budget. Economic strike, Mr. Morris, anything?
Just one thing that may be of relevance later on. Usually our economic development director is a ray of sunshine, but there was a bit of a thundercloud which I picked up on, which was with the hoteling issue. People are working at home and companies are, kicking back on their real estate. It may affect us downstream. in the sense of some of the office buildings. We may see our tax base go down because of that, although our economic development directors seem to think that we would be able to fill those. But he just said it's a warning, and we should all be aware of it, so I thought I'd pass it on to the board. Everything else was an inventory of all the projects that are going on.
Okay, our liaison reports, investment committee, I think we kind of heard we're flat, right?
Yeah, flat, and, which is a good thing in a low interest rate environment. The Federal Reserve is starting to raise interest rates.
Okay. I mean, the whole story, right? You get the inflation to go with it, but
Yeah, that's the positive side.
but our money's invested, it's not sitting idle.
Like it was.
Liaison work with the Board of Finance, Mr. Pocock, Mr. Bedoin,
Fire Commission.
Fire Commission. What did I say?
I attended the meeting, and there was nothing other than they've been very, very busy.
Report
That's a
is
good
out,
thing.
right?
And the math, I was gonna say, the math out, it is on the town website. Summary, which is the
Okay, any other committee reports? Board communications. I have a couple things. After this meeting, we're going to have another workshop. Before us, we have a challenging budget, and we're going to be working as a board very hard to figure out and then do what's right and responsible for the town, for all the taxpayers. At issue is a chunk of debt service coming on next year, the revaluation of vehicles, which was unprecedented. Typically, vehicles are on the grand list and they depreciate every year. So when you have a car in your first year, it's worth more, your second year, it's worth less, and it just depreciates. And as a result, your taxes on vehicles go down every year. This year, because of supply chain issues, demand, the vehicles have appreciated, which means their value went up. So a lot of people in the community are going to see their vehicle taxes increasing year over year on the same vehicle that they had last year. Usually you expect the value to go down and thereby the taxes to go down on the vehicles. We're seeing, we had grand list growth that was generating 4.3 million of revenue. 3 million of that revenue is coming from vehicles, and the majority of the 3 million, the vast majority, is coming from existing vehicles, which has never been the case here. We did see a few years ago a surge in pickup truck and large SUV values at one point, but that was it was minimal, or you couldn't even notice it, versus this one that will be noticed this year. So I think I just want to make everyone aware of that. And as a result of, not that, because that actually brings revenue in for the town. That's not, that's helping to keep this year's budget, the mill rate increase, very, very, very low in the current year. But when we look out a year, when we get beyond the budget that's before us and we look to the next year's budget, is where we're running into a concern, because next year's budget, our forecast for that, shows a 5% increase in taxes. Now, we have to address that and work on that. That's just what the forecast shows at this moment in time. So it puts a challenge forward for this board to figure out how best to address that. And we have options, and we have a workshop scheduled following this meeting where we'll go through some options, and we'll try to do the best while we're handling before us the 2022-23 budget. We're going to keep a strong eye on the 2023-24 budget and try and do our best to do things this year that are going to help next year, because we don't want I guess the manager has used the word, and we'll just use it from him, like a heartbeat action in the mill rate, where it bounces up and down. We don't want that. That's not how we want to manage. So we'd like to have that mill rate more managed, and we have to figure out how to do that. At the same time, we also have these are just challenges before us, or risk factors as we look at the budget. We also have a challenge before us because we're taking on a lot of projects, capital projects that need to be done. And later in the workshop, we'll be getting into what they are. But at a high level, it's redoing the fields at the high school. I think that was, I got to dig my notes a little bit, but at $17 million, right?
Correct.
We're looking at the development rights that we already purchased for Southington Country Club at $4.5 million. We have the library that's been approved by the voters at $17 million. Again, the high school, yes, 16.9. The high school fields at 17. The high school roof, the remaining piece, just a partial action on the roof at $6.8 million. We have other roofs coming on now at $6.7 million. They're coming up at Hatton Strong and Thalberg. And then we have we call it the three-school rationalization. We're going to be taking a look with the Board of Ed of what we do with the schools that have not yet been renovated, how we handle that approach, and some estimates have that coming in at $120 million, and then we have to figure out what the state reimbursement would be, and we're looking at a net cost to the town of possibly $60 million, half. And then there's just other routine stuff that we do. But as our debt changes and as voters approve these items in referendum, the debt service, the amount we pay to do them, goes up. So because of those items, it makes the following year, the 23-24 year, a challenge. And we're going to try to do our best to mitigate a spike in the mill rate, which we predict right now based upon our forecasting work to be about a 5% increase in tax in the following year. So we're going to work on that, and as a board, all six of us are going to do our best to see how we could address that, and what we all believe makes sense. So that's the challenge before us, and that's why we're having a workshop tonight. And just Friday at 1, we will be meeting here simply to pass the budget before us, which is the 2022-2023 budget. We turn that over to Town Council. They'll have an amount of time to work through it. They will give it back to us, at which time we will apply a mill rate to it. So we'll see where that all comes out. So that's just what's coming up. I would like to put a couple of workshops on the agenda. 2 workshops on the agenda sometime after next week. In the upcoming next 2 weeks, we'll have to talk as a group as to when we can do that. We'll talk when we're in to just to address again some of the options we have, and if we need to open our policies on our financial policies and say what can we do regarding the budget when we see a spike coming in the following year, what our options might be, and address possibly some options in policy that we could write. We'll talk about that a little more in workshop following this meeting. But we have to have some options, and I just don't think it should be every year just completely left at the discretion of how folks feel, but rather something in writing, like what is a trigger event, what do we do if we see a certain pattern coming, how do we address it, and if we put some language around that, it's something we could leave for the future boards of finance, that they could see what we thought through and did and not have to reinvent the wheel. So we'll all be involved, and I don't have anything written, it's just a thought. So anybody else have any board communications while we're on the subject? Okay. Public communications, any public communications? Okay. The review and approval of the Board of Ed non-lapsing account for 2020 projects. We'll take that up now.
Mr. Chairman, obviously, we have the superintendent and the director from the BOE here, but they submitted a document to you using up the final amounts of the FY20 and a small amount from the FY21. They set forth all the capital projects or the projects they wish to use that money. Questions would be, of course, the superintendent.
I have one question.
For-
I have for the Board of Ed.
Oh,
on
I'm
this. Has anything been done yet, or is in planning for caulking the windows at the high school or replacing them? I have seen nothing on those lists that indicate that.
That's currently not on the capital improvement plan.
Can you tell me why? There are windows that are leaking water, leaking air, so our air conditioning and our heating systems can't work and function well when the air is going right out the windows and the water's coming in.
Yeah, if there's a work order put in for a specific window, that's something that we can repair outside of a capital improvement plan. There's not anything I'm aware of in terms of a mass amount of windows all leaking water and air. We had OSHA come into the building last year, and they inspected the building for safety hazards and certain management issues, and that wasn't cited within that report.
You know, I don't know that that's a safety issue. It's our money going out the windows. I mean, I worked there.
Yeah.
I felt it. You could walk in the classrooms, you can talk to teachers.
Sure.
And our previous superintendent had known about this and
Okay.
said it was going to be in the capital improvement plan.
You have that?
And that's
So
what I'm not
we-
seeing it.
We do actually have in the non-lapsing 20 account, we have a line item for silicone ceiling masonry of $139,000, and that was in the original request of the fiscal non-lapsing account for 2020 last year. So the money is available to us, and as Mr. Bedancy stated, when we have work orders, and we'll refer to.
Is there any way that someone could just go through and look? Because there's whole sides where every window is leaking, and like the whole math department, that side upstairs, the quadrangles.
Sure.
I mean, everything's leaking on the right when you first enter.
Yep.
On those classroom windows, there's where water's coming in.
So to your point, the previous superintendent knew about that, which is probably the explanation for the $139,000.
Well, now you know about it.
In the
If you could
fiscal
get
year
somebody to
20, yeah.
check.
I was not part of the capital
Yeah.
improvement development in
Okay.
fiscal year 20, but I can, certainly the money has already been earmarked for that,
Okay,
and so we
well,
can certainly follow up.
Teachers are waiting for somebody to do something, and
Okay.
it's not going to be a teacher making a request, because when they make requests, nothing happens over there. So,
I don't know that I agree with that, but it's a fair
well,
point.
I had asked 5 times to have a pencil sharpener put in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and 5 more times for mice to be removed from a classroom.
Okay.
So, yeah, teachers have to request and nothing happens.
Sure.
So if it doesn't happen and nobody knows it's got to be done, now's the time. Now it's there. It's on the TV. Perhaps you can get someone to go in and check with one of those little meters that measures heat and see what's happening with the windows.
Sure.
I mean, there are secretaries in offices using heaters by their desks because they're freezing all year round.
Is there a
Middle
question?
of the summer. How are we going to deal with this? This is our
Okay.
money, our
Okay.
capital money.
So is this
going somewhere?
relative to this memo that we
That's
supplied?
2 things. That's heaters. But it's all related. It's heating and air
Sure.
conditioning.
No, I understand your point. I
So
just know if there was a
windows,
question.
Are we losing heat? People have to use space heaters.
Yeah, sure.
How are we going to deal with that?
So I think Mrs. Mallett shared that with you, that there's 139,000 earmarked for that.
Then the next question then is, are you going to find someone that you can send over to start checking those things?
We'll look into that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then please get back to me on that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Wait, before you go, can I ask a quick question? This is not about the projects per se. It's about the only spent a certain amount of the million that's available, right, from last year. The question is, why didn't you spend more? I mean, you must have other projects.
Sure. So part of it was when we went out to bid, we didn't get a lot of the bids that we had hoped to get. So there were projects certainly earmarked for those funds, but we weren't getting the bids, especially given the timing of when it was approved versus when we received the bids.
Okay, got it. And we'll see them sometime.
That was our hope with this request, that we could beat the bid season, because as you know, the labor shortage right now, the sooner we can get the bids out, the better chance we have getting some work done.
Yeah, thanks very much.
This also gives them the ability to do the April vacation. Talk to the superintendent and the operations director. Give them the ability to do that.
So the amount is 983,533?
It's what's left.
Yeah, it's what's
The amount, yeah.
So it takes care of the amount for fiscal year 20 and starts fiscal year 21, and there's still remaining, correct me if I'm wrong, in fiscal year 21 to 9.
That's the full amount.
Yep, very good.
We got lots of money.
Okay, do we have a motion to release the non-lapsing education fund for fiscal year 20?
So moved, Donnie.
And I'll second that.
Okay, motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, it carries.
Just a quick question. Are you also looking for the small amount of 21 to be released also? So there'd be a separate motion for 21, which is.
Okay, I'll see that, but, all right, let's make a motion for the,
Yeah, motion to release.
Second.
Which reads 21.
oh, hold on. Oh, that little, the 5 to 3,
yeah.
gotcha.
There's 6 items there.
Okay. Do we have a motion for the 6 items, the renovated nurse station, the bake shop, the re-anchor and heat loop welded pipe, replace the entry door to the Griffin space, paint the parking lot, lights at the high school, and repair the stairs to the boiler room behind the auditorium? They're small items. I can't add them in my head, but they'd be 50 grand.
Motion to release.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, that carries to the 2021 piece. Okay. Done. Next piece, the consent agenda. I'd like to take it all together, read it, and then take it all together. I don't see any reason for an abstain here. So the first item, appropriation. This is, again, the consent agenda is where we've already received the money. We're just appropriating it back to the line item. So $4,660 for the library for the building project donations received. $10,000 even for the library for Connecticut Humanities Support for program services. $5,350 for the highway for property maintenance loss damage. $2,200 for the highway department property maintenance loss damage. $400 for the police department canine program supplies, and $50,750 for the police department for an AED grant program where money's been received and they want to apply it. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I have a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries 6-0. The next one, bunch of little items.
Sorry, sure.
Yeah.
Just one question. Where do the 25? Where do those where do they go? The 25.
They're going to cruisers.
They're going to cruisers.
Yeah,
What's in there right now?
There's cruisers that we got from the Calvin East Foundation that are timing out.
Okay.
And I may get this wrong. Main Street.
Okay.
Reapplied Main Street Foundation. So.
Okay.
It was nice and generous.
Yeah, great. It's great. Okay, thanks.
Hopefully they get out and we save a life. Be a great thing. Okay, number 2, manager memos. First is a transfer, $7,000 bulky waste program supplies.
So,
I'm sorry, I stated in the document there's a OSHA requirement that we have to put together.
so moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. Number 1 carries 6-0. Number 2 is a transfer of $25,000 even. Town attorney, other professional services.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
Yes, before you vote on this,
All right.
this is just one step. This is a major case that the planning and zoning is. I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's an application that someone came to ask for affordable housing, and the process it was denied by planning. And the town had Very possibly, yes.
shot.
Very possible.
Okay, I know it. Hot shot.
Okay,
He's got me trapped.
we have a motion and a second on that one?
Yes.
Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, number 2 carries. Number 3 is an appropriation of $250 for the Calendar House overtime.
That's only here because of a member has to.
Second.
250.
Second.
Motion and a second by Mr. Morrison. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain. So it's
Abstain.
501, one abstention.
501.
Yep, but it carries. The next one is a transfer, and we'll do it in a few parts. It's a transfer, $4,685, Police Department building maintenance, transfer $12,200, Police Department clothing allowance, transfer $15,000 even, Central Dispatch overtime.
Those are self-explanatory in the document.
So moved.
Second.
Motion? We have a second?
I second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. That one carries 6-0. Number 5 is a transfer. Here comes the snow and ice. $51,638 for snow and ice program supplies, and an appropriation for $51,637 snow and ice program supplies. So a transfer and a
As
appropriation.
usual, we ask the department head to see if they can find it within the budget first.
I'll make the motion for the
Second.
transfer and appropriation.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. Motion carries 6-0. Number 6, appropriation, $33,500 Emergency Management Fund, the Rec Park Pool, and Pool House.
As we stated before, to keep a track of this, the money that we receive from as each one of the outlined to the line necessary.
Second.
Appropriation for 35.
Motion.
Sorry.
Motion to approve, second by Mr. Morrison. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Next item is a transfer of $5,000, Zoning Board of Appeals for advertising.
Self-explanatory.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second by Mr. Pocock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next one, number 8, is a transfer of $6,308, Police Department building maintenance, emergency transfer to be reviewed by the Board of Finance.
This is one that came to my office through the deputy chief. There was a March is difficult because you.
Scroll down, just I don't remember this one. Motion and a second, discussion. I just want to get to, what was it?
OSHA compliance.
Yeah, the OSHA gave us so many days to comply.
On with the red.
Okay, that's in.
It's number 8.
Underneath the copy, it says number 8.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 6-0. Number 9 is a transfer of $3,250, Barnes Museum temporary seasonal wages.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Police Department, School and Education, transfer $1,500.
Motion to approve.
Motion is second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 6-0. Fire Department, Equipment and Furniture, $30,000, transfer.
Their explanation is included.
Mark, when did this become an issue, or not, maybe not an issue, but when did this become a recommendation?
With the
In terms of the lights, right there, or signage, sorry. We're talking about, this is for signs?
Yeah, some of the signs had to be done through the OSHA.
Or just said there's been many close calls at the stations with drivers failing to yield. This has been I would assume, not a recent problem.
It's been going on.
Okay. All right. And this is the time that we're trying to fix it.
They are in a situation where they're able.
I'll second it.
All right, motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain? Nope. Okay. Number 12, transfer 9,000 Recreation Department temporary seasonal wages.
This is a
Make the motion to approve.
Yeah, second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number 13, 27,600 Emergency Management Fund contracted services.
as you aware, the MS4, which is our surface water, that's part of our ARPA money from the emergency management.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 14 is in two parts. Building Department, 5,700 for temporary seasonal wages and 1,300 for dues and conferences, both transfers.
This is necessary. Working on not only some reviews.
Have those gone up this year? Or?
They continue to be, we're because we have a part-time person doing just FOIs for the most part,
Yeah.
we're back to, at least from the residential standpoint, we're back to it. Some of the now a tool used by the old days when I used to go to the building department and check. Now you can do an FOI request. And I think, and I'll say this again, I know you all heard it before, but as you know, we're in the second year of our process to get everything digitized. Still going to get a few of them because people won't be able to.
Okay,
Thank you.
motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 15, the last one, is an appropriation for $138,660 for the Police Department overtime,
I'll start this one.
and I have the memo in front of us.
I'll start this one, and the director can pick up if I miss anything. Obviously, after the budget was approved, not just transfer all the money, budget's passed, we hold back on. Didn't do it. Normally what would happen, sometimes what happens, we put the money into regular wages, and they would ask for a transfer from regular wages to overtime. That's
So you
what they-
wait till you have it
We
all
wait. So in
encapsulated.
this particular case, they don't have the money in regular wages because we never transferred out of contingency.
But it was understood.
Yeah,
You know.
from the beginning, I just want to make sure that
Yeah, yeah.
people see this transfer and they go, oh my goodness, I just want to make sure everyone understood it. Did I miss anything?
Nope,
So, Amelia, after tonight, what do we have left?
did.
We started with 450, 666, so we
So-
take out 139.
Plus the 1,637.
Two.
Thing when it comes to where we get
260.
money.
160,000.
And that also,
250 left.
and that also,
260?
that also does not include the contingencies we have for South.
Okay. All All right, I guess we could look for our favorite motion.
Well, we got
No, what, we didn't vote?
motion to
Oh,
approve.
let's vote, I'm sorry. Did we? I
Motion to approve.
Too ahead.
I'll second
The
it.
police need that favor.
We had a motion
Yes.
and
I
a
second.
second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Okay, now we'll seek our favorite motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn at 8:09. And we're going to take a, like a 5 to 10 minute break.